Geography and You presents.
This place is very safe and this place is very unsafe. It depends on what kind of a response mechanism we have been building to address each hazard. If you have a place like Bombay or any other New York or any large city, in case of any hazard or say let's say fire, whether fire engine can reach or not. Okay. If it can be able to reach, if the high-rise building has sufficient facilities to fight with the fire, then there is no issue. But if you go to say place like Dharavi, where fire engine cannot even enter, and if there is a fire, then you will have a problem.
Welcome everyone to your very own GNY channel. So we bring to you very thought-provoking and very insightful dialogue between experts. And today we are very honored to have a very distinguished scientist with us, Dr. Shailesh Nayak.
Thank you very much. It's really pleasure to be here and to talk to you about some of the work which I had done. Especially, I would be very happy if on the work which I did using satellite data for the fisherman, which is potential fishing zone advisories. Then, of course, the tsunami warning system. Then a lot of other programs which we initiated in Ministry of Earth Science. And recently I have been trying to integrate science and social science, and one of the topics which we have been addressing is the blue economy. And all these aspects which I've been trying to address, one way or other, they are addressing the issues of sustainability. So that is the main idea behind that. How do we make our life much better, and in this planet Earth, how this planet Earth can be made better environment so that our lives can improve.
So there are two cues from that actually, which we can take forward. First is, of course, sustainability. We will go into that extensively, and we will talk about the most pressing, the ones that hog the headlines, the Himalayas. So we want to talk about that first, and then move on to other cues that you have provided. So tell us, Dr. Nayak, what is really happening in the Himalayas? Do you feel, for example, that that expert advice and the development versus the societal needs are not balanced? Something is of course quite wrong. How do you address this?
See, the Himalaya you have to view as a complete system. It has an impact on the global Earth system. Okay. So you can't view Himalaya as something which is affecting only us. It affects the entire world, whatever happening in Himalaya. So the first thing which is the knowledge about Himalaya. And when I say knowledge, we need information about the geosphere, the geological aspect, geophysical aspects. We need to know about the hydrology, the kind of rivers, glaciers, snow. We need to know about the biology or the ecosystems. We also need to know about the kind of atmosphere and their interaction and how all these have been interacting with each other. That knowledge up to a certain extent is not absolutely complete. We need to know many more things about the Himalaya.
Okay.
And that is why the response of the government or necessary policies which we make on Himalaya is not adequate. And the third, because of this knowledge is not sufficient, we have not been able to make people living there sufficiently conscious of whatever is happening there. Now, because all the three things there is some limitations or inadequacy, we are facing this issue of the certain hazards versus certain development. Now, as far as these hazards are concerned, the main problem that the episodic events like an earthquake or a landslides, there is not sufficient information, so we are not in a position to build any early warning system. And since we do not have the early warning system, whenever such hazard occurs, we lose lives and of course the property and other infrastructure and everything. So I think we need to view this from this angle, and first and foremost necessary is that how do we improve our knowledge about Himalaya as a system? So that is the first thing, and for that you will need large amount of observations, also from satellites, from aerial platforms, from field instruments, from models. So this is, I think, is first need to have this knowledge. Then only we would be able to answer the questions which are coming out of this. Whether development is important or livelihood is important or environment is important. But unfortunately, we still do not have, and many areas are inaccessible. You don't know about them. Apart from this, there are other things happening in Himalaya which we have not given attention. Is everybody knows that we are losing ice. Okay. Now, according to one estimate, we are losing something like 4 billion tons of ice every year. And when I talk Himalaya, I am not saying Indian Himalaya or Chinese Himalaya or Nepal. Himalaya as a whole system. Now, such a large mass, if it is shifting essentially from a land, then to rivers and ultimately to the ocean, what kind of changes may happen? Okay. As you know, when you remove a load from let's say something on a boat, if you remove that load, boat comes up. Okay. So the land, this is also land is something like a floating plates on a metal.
Yeah.
So there would be a change.
Yeah.
Now, we have not paid any attention to this change of mass going from place A to place B, and many of the issues which may be coming because of that. So unless we model all these aspects, that how the mass and energy is being exchanged between different components, let's say between land and atmosphere, or land and water, or snow and ice to water, or all this is not understood. And that, I think, should be the first priority for us before we answer any questions.
And if I may, sir, in the meantime?
In the meantime, whatever knowledge we have, we should see how best it can be utilized. Okay. So we may not have the answer, but we have a certain uncertainties about the information. So when we plan anything, we need to take those uncertainties into account. If I give an example, that I know that earthquake can occur in Himalaya. We also know that based on several studies and all, people may think that certain areas are more vulnerable than the other areas. So what we need to do is that those vulnerable areas, how we can protect the lives. Now, to do that, we need to identify that within this town or this settlement, these are the vulnerable areas, and the building should be constructed accordingly, taking into account that vulnerability. But there may be already a building. So what do? That we need to do retrofitting to strengthen those buildings. Also, you can't do for each and every building. So first, you should do hospitals, school, colleges, police station, government buildings to be retrofitted, so that when the earthquake occurs, they have a place to go which is safe. This we can do.
Yeah.
For that, we have sufficient knowledge. So I think we should start like this, that where we have a knowledge, accordingly, the response should come and people can support in that initiative.
What about building on the floodplains? Where we are seeing a lot of, especially the tourism ones.
Yeah, but that, if you construct on a floodplain, and when you say a floodplain, that means water is likely to come, may not come every year, but sometime. So that is absolutely a wrong thing. We do have a knowledge that you cannot do it on a floodplain. Now, the question may come up whether we have any laws to govern this. Okay. Many times, even if we have laws or rules to govern such issues, they are not implemented because of either local government is not very keen, or they are not ready to implement those things, whatever may be the reason. So this, I think it is a more issue of having a knowledge, but we are not implementing. Now, there is another reason for that. Another reason is many times we have seen that even if you know that these areas are vulnerable, people still occupy for two reasons. One, it may be economic, like the resorts and hotels and all. Second, sometimes the population pressure that there is no other place to settle. So they think, okay, I will settle here because that's the only place available to me. And many times it happens like that. Also, if you see the old buildings in the Himalaya, they are generally a very light structure.
Yeah. Wooden rafters.
So now you find all concrete, which has a much higher load. So all these factors together is creating an issue. So in between, we have to use existing knowledge. In my view, that is also sufficient to at least save lives.
Okay. And you say that we can develop an early warning system if we use the entire Himalayan chain as one. So there is a possibility of developing something like the tsunami warning system. Is it possible to do something?
I don't think. There are a lot of claims made about the early warning systems. But the first and foremost requirement of early warning system is you need to have an observations. Now, the kind of, let's say, take a landslide, it is more localized.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Now, we don't have that kind of a system where you monitor changes in the land surface entire Himalaya. So you can't do it. But again, the same principle which I say, which are the vulnerable sites for the landslide? Those sites, at least whether we can build certain monitoring system.
Okay.
To see that whether it, but that is not done. Though we have identified areas which are vulnerable, but we have not done. So I think the existing knowledge, whatever we have for anything, we need to make full use of that knowledge. That is I think the best way to move forward.
Right. So now we would just try to go into your idea about sustainability, just if we can talk about that a little bit. So what do you think is sustainability in the Indian context? And, can science be a central part of that sustainability? And where, in our context, where is it right now?
Yeah, this sustainability, you have to see at the three levels. The first is a global level, or Earth as a single system.
Okay.
And in Earth science, we consider Earth as a single system, which has a different components: a geosphere, biosphere, cryosphere, atmosphere, etc.
Yes.
Okay. Whatever happening in this are interconnected. And that is, I think, is a main knowledge which comes from the science. And essentially Earth system science, what we call. And this is being observed by satellite routinely with different kinds of satellite. Entire Earth is observed. So the Earth science is the one thing which is, I think, is fundamental to sustainability. Because when we say Earth science, it is not a geoscience alone, but it is also science related to ecosystem, science related to space, science related to social science, also economics and cognition. So Earth science, when we say, it is encompassing of all the three. And that knowledge is essential for the well-being of the people. Okay. So that is why science is the fundamental. The second level, we have to look at the social systems. How the governance, the infrastructure, the political system is there. This is important because you have been seeing with the same problem. Let's take climate change. Different countries' response is different. Right?
Absolutely.
The science is same. The global level science is, everybody agrees to that. But the response is not same.
Yeah, true.
So you also need a social system which responds to the scientific knowledge. And we have seen like USA is now out of Paris Agreement. And lot of contribution of US scientists to this, developing this science. So there is a contradiction. So this kind of a contradiction doesn't work. The third issue is how people are aware about this issue, which I told earlier also. And that is the human system. What is the lifestyle of people?
Consumption?
Lifestyle in the sense, I would say, their behavior, how they look at, let's say, waste.
Okay.
Or how they look at the use of energy. Many times you see that in India, mostly I've been seeing that if you are not in particular room, you will switch off the light. If you don't do, your mother or your wife or somebody will tell you to switch off the light.
Yes.
Okay. So that is our lifestyle. But if you go to US, you won't find that is happening because they say we can afford it. So the use of energy, use of material, like even in US, the population is small, but they consume almost 1/4 roughly of all the goods which is produced.
Yeah, I know.
So consumption pattern,
So we had this Millennium Development Goals, and then they said let's have Millennium Consumption Goals, which is I think 2012 or somewhere around, and then it came the Sustainable Development Goals. So there was an idea about using consumption
Absolutely.
as one of the propellants of climate change, and of course all of this world systems that you're talking about in sustainability. But it didn't happen. So why don't we talk about consumption? What is it?
Yeah, it is not happening because of the whatever imbibed in our mind or the behavior which we attuned from your childhood. Because we have been told not to waste food, not to waste energy, from the very young. Okay. So that is but that is not happening everywhere. So the consumption, the responsible consumption is also equally important. And that all comes from the what kind of a human system you have.
True.
Okay. So, and all these three systems also interact. We have not been able to model them. Like interaction of a social system with the earth system leads to global warming.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you see the interaction of a earth system with the human system, when you destroy the ozone hole, you will have certain health impacts of the getting ultraviolet light.
Mm-hmm.
So like that, each system interacts with the other system. And I think that is what we need to develop models to how these three aspects, one at the level, which individual level, other maybe at the country or a level, or wherever governance comes, maybe state or a municipality, depending upon. And the third, global level, where the science is. Okay. So I consider that the science is central in sustainability, and that also earth system science is the central.
Okay. That's very fortunate because, of course, you belong to the Earth System Sciences, and I'm sure somebody from this space is central. But having said that, what is interesting is taking, from your initial comments that you said that we have to integrate society. So basically, science and society connect that you're talking about. I think that's key to earth sciences. I mean, that doesn't really happen in, say, pure sciences. Like, the application may be there, but the connectivity between earth system sciences and human sciences, I think that is very, very close. So here I would lead you to another question that I have is, so do you think humans are the problem? Do you think we are too many? Do you think we need a Thanos? What is it?
I think we can't see that as too many in a very broad sense. This we should view from a resources available vis-a-vis the population. So there may be an issue in certain cases where the resources are not there, let's say water resources, but the population is high, or either way. So if you see overall a carrying capacity of the world as whole, I think there is no much issue.
Okay.
But if you are talking about carrying capacity of some small region where the density is very high, there could be an issue. Like if you have a place like Bombay or any other New York or any large city, in case of any hazard or say let's say fire, whether fire engine can reach or not. Okay. If it can be able to reach, if the high-rise building has sufficient facilities to fight with the fire, then there is no issue. But if you go to say, a place like Dharavi, where fire engine cannot even enter, and if there is a fire, then you will have a problem. So I always like to break down all issues, as I told you, in the knowledge, the response of the government, and the human system. So the kind of infrastructure which you need for sustainability also is equally important. We cannot have sustainable development unless you also have a sufficient infrastructure. And many times the fire which is anthropogenic, you can control by and large if you have sufficient infrastructure. But the fire which happens because of the climate change, which is currently happening in Europe, It also happened in US, also happened in Australia. And there is no solution. Because you cannot fight that natural fire with our anthropogenic instruments or human technology, whatever. You are not able to fight.
It's too big.
Okay. So, these fires are not controllable. And if you, of course, technologies do helping us to at least control in some manner. Even then we lose some lives, animal lives we lose, but at least we have been able to control. But the Mayan civilization in 10th century essentially was lost because of fire. Because they were not able to control. And if it happens year after year after year, you lose your vegetation and you lose your food. So the civilization collapses. So the technology which we have is allowing us to address some of these issues. But if this continues for, say, 200 years or 400 years, then we don't know. So we have to look from this angle. The population alone we should not look as an issue, but how it is concentrated, whether those are vulnerable areas, not all those aspects has to be put into practice.
Okay, interesting. So moving back again to India and the coasts of India, you've done a lot of work on the Indian coast. So now we have coastal erosion and we have, the sea level rise and eating away. But of course, like we were discussing a little while ago, those are not really sudden events. They don't happen. They happen over many, many years. They just don't happen at one point in time, unlike flash floods. So in terms of Himalaya and the coast, where does one go to live really?
No, I think we have to look this slightly differently because if you ask me, I would prefer to go to Himalaya and stay.
Okay.
But if you look at from the hazard point of view, on the coast we have a cyclone, tsunami, episodic events like that. We have adequate warning system and it has proven over the period of time that they are quite effective. The government is quite ready to respond to that. People are also quite conscious about those. So we hardly lose any lives during this. So that way it is quite safe. If you look at the erosion which is happening because of sea level rise, maybe very gradual. There may be you lose some properties and all, but normally it doesn't happen overnight, so you don't lose actually any lives. But these hazards are very common. I mean, cyclone will come every year. The sea erosion is almost happening every time. Okay, so the ongoing. Different areas. So, but if you look back to Himalaya, the earthquake may happen once in a while.
Yeah.
Landslide may be occurring every year, but in a very small area in a different region. So, the people's memory in the local region is a very short. So, if suppose I am living in Simla and earthquake has not happened in last 100 years or 50 years, I don't care.
True.
Because 2-3 generations, there is no such memory. But if it is happening every year, even small tremors, then you are concerned.
Yeah.
So that way, it is not something that this place is very safe and this place is very unsafe. It depends on what kind of a response mechanism we have been building to address each hazard. And I think if you have a knowledge, you build a warning system. If you don't have sufficient knowledge, you identify vulnerable areas and take necessary precautions. So I think that way we have to see from that angle.
Okay. So now my last question to you, sir. because as you get older, you tend to become more cynical, and you're not really, you don't find ways and means of getting through to a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and you feel like it's there, but it's not happening. So how hopeful are you about sustainability? And the fact that you said that, to identify vulnerable regions and to work towards them as a region, not really, what I feel is not a state, not an international border, not to take these things into cognizance, but to just understand vulnerability. How hopeful are you?
No, I'm very confident. I don't think the human, over a period of time, if you see, has always evolved solutions or adapted to that solution. If you look back almost 200,000 years ago, which we called as a Pleistocene, where the Quaternary period, and that was the period when the early humans came in the Pleistocene. Now we know that in Pleistocene, what happened is that there was a sudden change in the climate. Of course, when I say sudden, it is in geological terms. So it's 1,000 to hundreds of years. It's not in seconds. There were changes where the savannas or grasslands were changing to woodlands or a forest, close forest, or forest to savannas. Now, this was happening because change in the weather, monsoon, because of certain tweaks in our Earth orbit. We don't go into the details. So, what happened is that during grassland, the period was dry and the hot, and during woodland, it was moist and cold. And the humans were evolving at that time. And if you see the kind of savannas and woodlands, the food is entirely different. They were hunters, they were not growing any agriculture. And their food became quite different when there is a savannas and woodlands. So they had to shift from certain food to food which is available during forest. Then again, that over a period of generations, 100,000 years. And they evolved and adapted to that. Okay. No other animals have adapted to that. Okay. So they adapted and they came to what we call as a Holocene period, about 11,000, where they started learning about settling down. Okay. And then the civilization grew. So the human as such, I think they have a capability to adapt to any situation.
Even if it's very quick?
Even if it is very quick, in the sense that even the climate change which we are talking today is likely to take 100 years, 150 years.
Okay.
So it is not that quick as we think. And if you see, we already started adapting. Even, people now say, we'll eat millets. Now, millets, because it's a C4 crop, which is when the carbon dioxide is high, their production increases, unlike wheat, which decreases. So people started talking about millets, soybean.
True.
So we have already started without realizing. Okay.
Interesting.
So I think we have a capability to adapt, and I am sure that we will adapt, and I am 100% sure about this. Okay. And the one comment which you make, when you become old, you become more optimistic like me than cynical.
On that lovely note, we end today's conversation, and we look forward to having you with us once again in the future, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to be here, and I would definitely like to come again. Thank you.